Okay, we are live. Welcome back, everyone. My name's Ryan, and welcome to the Indie Music Academy, the channel where we uncover the mysteries of the music industry, learn how to grow a larger fan base, and earn an income from our music. And today I have a super special guest, Danny Jones, who is going to be sharing so much of his wisdom and experience in his long career in the music industry. He's an engineer, a producer who's worked with many, many artists. He's worked with Ellis Marsalis, Santana, Pitbull, George Strait. He's worked with Bill Watrous, Joe Walsh, Stevie Ray Vaughan, Kings of Leon, and more. He's mixed live concerts to over 50,000 attendees at places like the Houston Livestock Rodeo Show, at the New Orleans Jazz Fest. It's just incredible to have you with us. Thank you so much. I'm just going to invite everyone who is joining us today to drop a hello in the comments. This is, as you know, live, and we want to have this time available for you to be a part of this show and ask your questions and take advantage of Danny being here with us, where you can ask your questions to him directly. Now, we do have some awesome things we want to share with you. It's going to be a great show today, but seriously, don't be shy. Just drop a hello. We love seeing your names pop up. We want to, get to know you a little bit through the chat. This is your opportunity to join the broadcast today. So, Danny, thank you so much for taking the time to hop on my YouTube channel and to share just your amazing experience. For anyone who maybe has never heard of you yet, can you just give us like a little history and a little story as to how you started in music and just a little background to catch people up who maybe have never heard of you so far?
Sure. However, when you start mentioning all these credits, it reminds me of a story. A guy's telling his dad, "Hey, Dad, we're getting this guy, and he played with so-and-so, 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 and so-and-so." And the dad says, "Well, I don't know, son. Sounds to me like he has trouble keeping a job." Sorry, I hadn't thought about that in a long time. But I'm originally from Arkansas, Jonesboro, Arkansas, and I grew up there in band programs and spent many years in Memphis. Toured over a great portion of the country in my youth, traveling in bands and playing drums. And then I got into, actually I had my first recording session when I was 14.
Nice.
My band won first place at our junior high talent contest in Camp Junior High, Jonesboro, Arkansas. And, when they announced us winning first place, I mean, the whole place just erupted with this loud cheer and applause. And I was hooked. And I'm still there. But then someone was calling a local radio station, wanting to hear our records. I'm 14 years old. We didn't exactly have a lot of records. But anyway, we went into a recording studio there and recorded a couple of songs. They actually played it. So I got my first radio airplay when I was 14.
Wow.
And I thought that was pretty cool. And I don't get to tell that story very often, but now it's on record. But I spent years working in Memphis, and then I ended up having a wonderful opportunity going to work for a man named Allen Toussaint in New Orleans. And I worked for Allen for many years. Moved back to Memphis, was there for years. Was very involved in the Memphis chapter of the Grammys while I was there. And then decided that it was time to move to Texas.
All right.
I think in 2002. I have a lot of family here. My mother was here, my two of my sisters. And so I'm still here in Texas. I still play. Most of my playing is done in recording studios now, but I still produce and engineer. And that leads me up to today. And now I get to be here with you, Ryan.
Well, so glad you are. A ton of people just joined in. Chris says, hey. He is here joining us live. Alan says, greetings from Metro New York City area. Welcome, Alan. Andrew says, hey, Alan. Has having little conversations over here. Anno, I think that's what it is. Hey. Oh, no, Dave from Germany. Okay, thank you for providing your name, Dave. And Shadow Music says, hello. It's me, Harbor Mason. Barry's watching. Awesome. So glad you guys are here. I talked with Danny a few weeks back. Just fantastic musician, fantastic person. And we we went into all kinds of details, so many stories. You have so many great stories of the fantastic artists that you've met and worked with over your career. And we kind of came up with an outline of kind of like the core, I guess, or not the core, but maybe some of the most important lessons that you've learned. Good lessons like, man, that really worked. I'm going to make sure to do that again. And also some like learning experiences too, like, oh, shoot, like I maybe should not have done that. And, you know, we all have our ups and downs over the years. And I just want to invite us to just begin our first kind of our first bit of advice from someone who has just been in the music business for a long time, is a part of the Grammy organization, who has been not only doing it, but also teaching it for a long time. And so I would just want to also echo, if you're here with us live, feel free to ask your questions as we go along too, because we will do a Q&A at the end. So just drop your question in. We're going to let them collect. And without further ado, do you have our outline in front of you, Danny, by the way?
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. Let's go to bullet point number 1, because these are just fantastic bits of advice that I think everyone should hear. It definitely helped me. I'll introduce it. First is listen first, right? Listen first, speak second. Tell me like the story and the reason why you decided to share this with the audience today. Listen first, speak second. What does that really mean in the music industry?
Well, when you first start out, you really don't know anything. Thankfully, sometimes we're too naive to really understand that, and that's what pushes us through to the next level. But I've seen situations. I mean, I also, and I forgot to mention this earlier, I teach percussion here as well. And even though the specifics may be somewhat different, I kind of take the same approach to teaching as I do producing or working with anyone in the studio. And let's try to get, the best performance out of them. But especially if you're around people who know more than you, you need to open your ears and close your mouth.
Yeah.
In those situations, when feel like they have to talk all the time, it just sort of sometimes shows how much you really don't know. And if you're trying to get in with the situation, because I have worked with a lot of interns in past years, and a lot of this is just common sense, but sometimes, as we all know, that's not always common. I always figure this: if I'm in a situation, I know what I know, but I may or may not know what you know. So maybe I should just close again the mouth and listen. I'm not saying that it's never a good idea, to talk and sort of, ask questions, but if you're looking for someone to want to help you along the way, then you need to have a very open mind and not try to dominate any kind of conversation. So just listen and learn, and it is really that simple. Listen and learn.
Right. It's a fundamental posture, kind of humility. Like if you're entering into someone's studio, or if you are working with someone who's been there before, gosh, it's such a great piece of life advice, not just music business advice, but life advice to understand, like, just, do what you're needed, of course, right? And have conversation, be friendly, but don't impose your ideas when there's an expert in the room, right? Because more often than not, that can backfire. I think that's what you're saying, where, you probably don't know as much as the expert, or you probably don't have, a pulse on things as much as the person who's been doing it longer. And,
I was able to convince a couple of people early on in my engineering career to let me sit in on some sessions. And I know one, and I'm very thankful for all of those opportunities. But one was with a man named Ron Capone, who was the chief engineer at Stax Records in Memphis for many years. And then he went to work over at Ardent Studios. And I'm not really sure even how I approached him, but he would let me sit in on sessions until the actual client showed up. And so he would have like a room full of musicians and they're getting sounds, but I was a fly on the wall. I mean, it's like I didn't ask questions because he's working. Don't interrupt him.
Yes.
And I might ask him a question. I did ask him questions later on, after the fact. But when whoever's working, whether it's an engineer or producer, don't interrupt them. Again, I tried to become invisible at times because I was there to learn, and I wanted them to let me come back, to sit on the session. I had, on the opposite of that, I had an intern one time that I finally just had to say, "Hey, listen, I'm sorry, but it's probably not a good idea for you to come back." And I had been working on a project with a group, and they said, "Whew, boy, we're glad he's not here." And I said,
yeah.
Really? They said, "Oh yeah, he was kind of a pain." And I apologized to them. I didn't realize he was spilling over into that world. But he lost the opportunity to sit in and learn more on sessions just because he didn't just keep his mouth closed and listen. When you're there, it's okay to have an opinion, but you just keep it to yourself unless someone asks. And then if you don't have an opinion, it's okay to say, I'm not really sure. I mean, nobody's going to hold that against you. You might make something up on the spot that you think is the right thing to say, and they go, "Well, I totally disagree with that." And then you go, "Oh man, I just did two weird things." I mean, they may still say that, but still, if you're just trying to get in, and I take it that a lot of people who are watching this are people who are wanting to get into the business, and if you are fortunate enough to find someone that will sort of, take you under their wing, take it for the opportunity and blessing, that is.
Absolutely.
That point.
Yeah. And don't, ruin that opportunity just by, I guess probably trying to be impressive, right? Probably trying to put on a show when really you're just there to learn and understanding that difference. I've heard so many stories exactly like this, where it's the intern or it's the person who is very hungry and has like a great passion and desire to learn and to be there, but it's missing kind of the temperance and the skill to listen at the same time. So that's great advice.
Well, this very much is a people business, and when you talk about recording, you're talking about creative people who may be incredibly good, but also incredibly fragile and insecure. You have to be careful with actually everything that you say. And it's not that you necessarily have to treat everyone with kid gloves, but that's a pretty good approach to take, because I have seen some sessions just destroyed by a comment that someone made, and someone took offense to it, and then someone else took offense to that. And I mean, I've only seen that one or two times that it was like serious, but I saw one. I mean, it was over. People just left. That session ended, that day, because one person started something that they should have just kept to themselves.
Wow.
So
yeah, that's such a hard truth to hear, but it probably happens way more often than what we discuss in these conversations. And gosh, avoiding a moment like that can change everything for your career.
Yeah, I mean, I try to, when I see something like that now, of course, those things happened pretty early on in my career, and I was not the producer on the sessions. So, I only had so much control. But when I see something like that start to happen, I try to diffuse that, pretty quickly. And sometimes the more you do it, diffusing and working with people, hopefully, you get better at doing it. And I think one thing that has really helped me in my whole career is I've spent a lot of time on both sides of the glass, so to speak, the glass being the control room window, because I started out as a musician and a singer, and I had times where I had really great engineers that were very encouraging, and then I had a couple of times where the guys were two different people. They were pretty condescending and made me feel, and my whole band, it's just sort of unwelcome. I mean, we're paying our money, but I don't know if we weren't good enough, for them or not. But, when that happens, I mean, first of all, you shouldn't treat anyone that way, just, as human beings. And secondly, again, going back to what I said a moment ago, you're dealing with sometimes, fragile, insecure people. Even though we may or may not be really great at what we do, there's still that insecurity that's going on. And I've never forgotten those situations. So when I work in the studio, I really try to go out of the way to make people feel comfortable, because studio can be a very intimidating place.
Absolutely.
You go in, and especially, I mean, if you don't live there, so to speak, and you're going, oh my gosh, I hope I don't sing out of tune. I hope I don't play wrong. I hope I don't do, people are
Right.
or they can be. So I try to calm everyone down. It's like, it's going to be okay. Can I get you anything? Is everything okay? And if something's not working right, I ask, what can I do to help you out? Are you hearing yourself okay? What can we do? Is there too much light? Not enough light? And, I feel like people respond to that. And it's like, okay. All right. Because, I mean, I've really come into some situations where people were really, really nervous. And especially sometimes when, they go, sometimes I get hired because of a lot of the people that I've worked with. And at the same time, that intimidates some people.
Yeah.
And then, oh, well, I don't sing as well as Patti LaBelle. I don't play guitar as well as Stevie Ray Vaughan. I don't. And it's like, just, don't go there. You just do the best that you can do. Whatever it is, you just always do that. I mean, you always bring your A game. You make sure that you do everything to the best of your ability all the time, not just when, quote, it's important, because it's important every single time. Because whatever you do all of the time, that's the habit that you're creating. And if your habit is, well, okay, it's not that important right now, so I'll just not do my best, then what's going to happen when you're supposed to do your best? Now you're in a whole different world. Oh, now I'm supposed to be good? You're supposed to be good every single
time. Practice being good. Yeah.
And because that's the habit that you form. Excellence all the time. And I think that it's what I try to do, and have tried to do this for as long as I can remember, especially as long as when I finally figured out that that's really what I should do. Some things you do sort of instinctively, and then some things are learned along the way. And then sometimes you do something and later on you realize actually what you're doing, good or bad.
Right.
And go, oh yeah, I need to keep doing that. That's working. Or, wow, you know what? Every time I try that, it doesn't work. Maybe I shouldn't do that one. I know a lot about that.
Yeah. And Michael says, I've been DIYing for a few years now. I want to learn from someone who's been there. So you're in the right place, Michael. Christian says, looking forward to the business development tips today. And Tom says, appreciate the advice, guys. Great to see you on the interview. Thanks, guys, for chiming in. Thank you so much for being here. Continue dropping your questions in. I want to ask you something, Danny. Obviously, this is a little bit planned. We've already talked about this, but what would you say is the most important skill when you're in the studio? Is it, your engineering? Is it your people skills? What would you say? And I know I'm totally leading you on to our planned today, but
well, and I think I mentioned this when we were talking. a few weeks ago. Attitude. What is that? Attitude determines altitude. Attitude is almost everything. I mean, skills, and certainly people skills. Oh my gosh, because you're going to be working with people. I don't care what it is that you do, but you can be the greatest programmer, or the greatest drummer, or the greatest guitarist, or whatever. But if people don't like being around you, they're not going to just call you all the time. You may get calls for certain things if that is, if you really have something special that you do. And I've had certain musicians, and not very often, but I've had certain musicians that I knew that if I was going to work with one-on-one, I would call this person because I knew I could handle it. But if it was a certain client, I wouldn't call them on that date because I knew that they could potentially mess up the session with their attitude, particular client. Now, that's been really, really rare, but it has happened, and it's happened, more than once. But, the attitude, when I have, go back to interns or somebody, because, I get calls from people from time to time and says, hey, listen, I'd like to come in and work with you, and I'll work for free. And, sometimes I take people up on it after I meet with them and talk to them. And then sometimes I don't. And I remember one guy got really upset with me years ago. He says, well, I don't understand why you won't let me do this. I'm coming in working for free. And I said, what you don't understand is that it's going to take me twice as long to do the work with you there, because I'm going to have to explain to you how to do everything the way I want it done, which means now it's going to take me longer to do this. And more than likely, about the time you get to be where you're of some value to me, you're going to leave. Now, what's in that for me? And I don't mean to sound, selfish, but at the same time, I'm here trying to make a living and trying to get better at what I do. But, on the other hand, when somebody comes in and they have what I think is the right attitude, and they're really, really ready to learn and really great to be around, I want them here. I have picked up a lot of information and knowledge through the years, and, I don't want to just carry it all to the grave with me. I've had some people who were very generous to me, in my early years. Not everybody, but enough that I see the importance of that. And, I got from people, so I want to give to people at the same time. So whenever I can help, I want to do that. But at the same time, if somebody's wanting to come in and learn and they're going to work on projects, I have a responsibility to my clients too.
Right.
Like I mentioned my story about the guy, years ago that the band said, we're really glad he's not here. And, I don't ever want that to happen again. And it hasn't. I take a pretty hard look at everything. But, skills, they can be learned. Attitude, I guess that can be learned too, but you better learn that one really, really quickly. And I know, especially, if you've done everything, at home, and especially, today, everybody has access to some kind of recording systems. There's free recording systems out there. You don't really get a chance to really learn the skills, and there's a real art to running a recording session. It can be really easy for one to just get bogged down, become disastrously slow, or just disastrous and dissipate, like I mentioned earlier. But all of those things you can be learned. I will say this: some of the best young people that I've had, and what I mean by young in not always in age, but in the age of recording, is if somebody had some little something extra, like there was this one young man, none of us are as young as we used to be, but I used to bring him in to do MIDI programming for me because he was brilliant at doing that. and he wanted to become an engineer. And I thought he had a good attitude, and I liked him. I had a studio that I was working with in Memphis. I used to just basically lock him up in the studio all night, just so he'd have time to, to play. And he's had a pretty successful career. He's been in Los Angeles now for quite a number of years. And, but it was his MIDI skills that got me to keep calling him, because I was producing artists, especially back in the 80s. That was huge. I think I went about a 3-year time period with that I didn't record acoustic drums at all. It was all drum machines, samples, that sort of thing. And I remember one I got him because he was recommended to me and to use a particular studio. And the guy just, every once in a while, I'd say, man, we'd be nice if we had a so-and-so. And he said, I have one. And said, you do? Yeah. You want me to go get it? I said, yeah. He became very valuable, that session. He's also had a pretty successful, career in the business. But, attitude, as far as I'm concerned, attitude will get you in the door. It will keep you in the door.
Yeah. It seems crazy that I really like what you said earlier about how a lot of times people don't realize that even working for free can be a burden on the project or a burden on the mentor. And the difference is like, do I actually enjoy you in the room? Like, do I enjoy spending time with you? Because you don't realize it, but you're actually slowing me down. More than happy to help, but you're slowing me down, and I have clients. And that's a really, I think, crucial thing for people to understand, especially if, if you're, cold emailing people, or you're just kind of handing out business cards. You maybe don't realize what your pitch is really asking, right? Or what your offer is really going to do to affect the other person. I think that's just fantastic advice for all of us to realize that it's like, you might be slowing someone down, you might be a burden, but the attitude, right, will make it all worth it. Or having one skill that is just super valuable in the room in combination with a great attitude is going to be kind of the difference maker. Not necessarily that you're working for free, because, it's not, it comes with strings attached sometimes. I thought that was really great advice. I want to actually touch on something that you just said about that individual having the MIDI programming skills, because you mentioned to me that diversifying your skill set and your income streams is crucial. And is that something that happened with this person? Was it that like he wanted to be an engineer, but he can do many things very well? Was that how he was able to become very valuable?
By the time I had met him, he had just graduated from high school, and he had played keyboards in bands, but he was really into the technical end of it. And I met him through a studio that I used to work a lot out of in Memphis. Other clients were using him, and I can't remember if I just saw him and asked, or if someone recommended him. I really don't remember how we first started working together. Actually, I do remember. I was hired to engineer a project that he had been hired to do the MIDI programming. That's the way that went. So we actually worked together on sessions.
Gotcha.
And he was sharp as a tack. And so when I had some projects that I was producing and I needed someone with his skills, he's the guy I called. And he always delivered. He always showed up on time. He was a little bit of a character. I would imagine he still is. I'm sure he's mellowed a little bit, but he was excellent. I loved working with him, and we don't talk a lot these days. We live very far away from each other, but we hear from each other every once in a while. When he got his first #1 record, he sent me a thank you note.
Oh, that's nice.
saying, man, thank you for all of that, that time you invested in me.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, and that was actually no effort at all. I mean, yeah, was it an effort in some respects? Of course, but I love doing it. And when I see people, have success like that, then I'm thrilled.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I really am. I love it when everybody has success. It's a big world out there, so
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of room for success. I know sometimes people get caught up in all the little me things, and well, I want this to happen for me, so I don't want it to happen for you. Well, I want it to happen for me too, but that doesn't mean I don't want it to happen for other people.
Mm-hmm.
So and I've had several former students, although he really wasn't a student of mine, but former students who have done really well, and I love it. I mean, and that's, I had a little piece of it. None of us are what they say. None of us are an island, and we're all influenced by people and situations that we've been part of. And I just would like to think that I was a little piece of, if for nothing else, just encouragement along the way.
Awesome. I just want to go over to the chat really quick. There's a few questions that come in. By the way, we are going to do a Q&A at the end. So if we don't get to your question right now, don't worry, we will at the end. But there's a couple that came in that I think are good to just pop in. Shadow Music's asking, I have no idea what percussion means. I think that was from earlier when you said that you teach percussion.
Drums.
That's right. Drums.
But not just drums, because most of my students are in school band programs. So I teach on, some lessons, drum set, snare drum, marimba, timpani, cymbals, all tambourines, triangles.
Yeah.
Lots of cool little things.
Just cool stuff. Yeah. And then I thought this was a great point that's relevant to what you just said. He says, isn't it paradoxical that the image of a lot of artists look like the ones who are obnoxious and can't keep quiet? And it seems that it causes people to feel that that's the right way to be. But maybe that's so if you're projecting image as an artist, but in the studio, when you're working with professionals, it's definitely best to not be obnoxious. Wouldn't you agree, Danny?
No, I've certainly experienced that before, but that's actually been more of the exception than the rule. And I actually have found, and obviously I can only speak from my experiences, but the bigger the artist, the nicer they were, the easier they were to work with.
Wow.
They weren't trying to prove anything in the session. They just wanted, to do the best. And I also feel like those artists were also some of the ones who gave me the most freedom to do my job.
Wow.
They didn't try to bother me, because some of those artists I was working with, like as I mentioned, I worked with Allen Toussaint for a number of years, and so like Patti LaBelle, depending on the artist, can certainly differ in how you maybe treat them. And I don't mean you treat some people nice and you don't treat other people nice, but sometimes when you have a really high profile artist, you need to set the stage, so to speak, for something that you think they're comfortable with. But and Patti, for example, I've seen all kinds of interviews with her, but Patti was as nice as it comes to me. She was extremely nice, and she's a big star, but when we're working in the studio, but oh my gosh, what a professional. When she came in ready to sing, it wasn't, oh, let me go get warmed up. And she'd already done that at her hotel. Yeah. And when she came there, buddy, a few of these gray hairs came from those sessions. And not because she was difficult to work with, but you just had to be on now.
Because she was on.
Yeah. There was no, okay, let's do a vocal check and run through a couple of times. Nope.
Mm-hmm.
It was a performance every single time.
Wow.
And especially her, she has such a vocal range that, as an engineer trying to capture all of those, the low parts and, then she built up in a high range. And, this was on analog tape. And, you're always concerned with, well, you don't want to record it too low because now you're going to get some tape hiss, but be careful. So you're riding, the fader.
Yeah.
So anyway,
it's a different time. Yeah. A different time for recording. I want to jump ahead because there's a really great thing that I want to cover before we go into questions, but it's something about the hierarchy of the room. Now, this is really for engineers and producers, but when you mentioned this to me last time we talked, I thought that this was just so important and not really spoken about here on YouTube and very often.
Yeah.
But,
well, when I mentioned that to you, and you seem to be really surprised. At first, I was surprised, and then the more I thought about it, it's like, well, how would you know this unless you've really experienced it? So then it wasn't really so surprising to me at all. And and what I meant by that is, and no one really ever explained this to me. I just realized it. But there is, and I use that term hierarchy in the room. If you're an assistant engineer, you talk to the engineer. You whisper to the engineer if the session is going on. If you're the engineer and you have a comment to make, you make it to the producer. And again, you whisper it to the producer if the session is going on. Because the producer that person is in control of the session. I don't care who the artist is. I mean, artist is number one, always, as far as the importance. I mean, if the artist wasn't there recording, you wouldn't be there.
Right.
Maybe with another artist, but your whole reason for being there is to serve the purpose, of the artist. But the producer is really the person who's in charge, either with a production company, record company, or if it's just an independent, not just an independent, but an independent as far as say you're doing this for, say you're hired by the artist, themselves. But, there's the political aspect of it. There's the whole, again, psychological aspect about what you should or shouldn't say to an artist when you're trying to get the best performance out of them. And if you're an assistant and you start, I'm not saying that you can't speak to people and be nice. That's not what I'm saying at all. But what I'm saying is, and I had this happen one time in a session. I'm producing this artist and she's doing a vocal, and I have this intern who just goes, after a point, said, "Boy, that sure was out of tune." I said, "We'll talk about this in a bit." And we took a break, and the guy, the head of the production company, was there. He just looked at me. He just started laughing. But I had a talk with this intern. I said, that was totally inappropriate to say that. Oh, really? I said, yeah, really. And he'd come from some big recording school. And I'm not knocking recording schools at all. But I said, they didn't tell you that? And he said, no. I feel like they probably told him, he just didn't hear it. But I explained to him why you don't do that. I mean, there's all kinds of reasons why you don't do that, but you do not do that. You do not speak up. If you're gonna be in a session, and you better be paying attention. So let's just say someone's having trouble with headphones, and you're the assistant. That engineer better not have to turn to you and explain the situation. You better already be alert about what's going on, and you say, "Got it," boom, and you're gone out there. You get another set of headphones. I'm just using that as an example, but I mean, those kind of things, that can and sometimes, do happen. And again, those are the people that are going to get used. And But see, here's the cool thing too about this. This is how you get to move up, because sooner or later, if you get to be in one of those situations, and those situations are fewer and fewer these days, in terms of having, lots of big studios to work in. But at some point, some engineer's not going to show up. They're either hung up in traffic, they're sick, or they just didn't show up for whatever reason, and you're the guy or gal. This has nothing to do with male or female.
Right.
I've had great interns, both male and female, so that doesn't matter to me. But then you're going to get a chance to fill in. And I've seen when people got to fill in, and I got to do that at times, and people said, oh, okay, he didn't totally suck. Let's try him again. And then I've seen times when people drop the ball and, they didn't get that opportunity. But, also as a producer, I mean, because I did so many sessions for so many years for so many different producers, what a wonderful learning experience. You learn some of the things like, wow, that's really cool. I got to remember that. I'm going to do that. And then also some of those, wow, that was not cool at all. I'm going to definitely remember, don't do that. I don't think that works at all. So, you learn from the good situations and the bad. Sometimes you almost learn more from the bad. And if you make a mistake, you better learn from it. Don't make it again. But, don't be afraid to make a mistake. I hope did I cover all of that okay?
No, fantastic. It's such a good piece of advice, because a lot of people, I'm sure, that are tuning in as well are wondering, how do I, showcase my talents? How do I move up? How do I, show the value that I have? And it all has to be within the right context. It all has to be within your spot in the hierarchy. I don't think that's the wrong word to use, right? Because the artist, of course, is, number one, as you said, but the producer is working directly with the artist. And if you circumvent that relationship, if you, kind of take a role that you don't have, right, that can actually be self-sabotage, right? If you want to move up and you do it at the wrong time, or you kind of take an opportunity that you shouldn't take, you're really shooting yourself in the foot. Now, like you just said, there will be times to rise up, but you have to wait for them. And I think that's excellent advice, right? Saying a comment out of turn, doing something that, that the engineer should have done if you're in the assistant engineer, or doing something that the producer should have said when you're not the producer, is just totally self-sabotage. And it's, I think it's probably the best advice that you can give, is like, know your role in the room, know when you need to speak and when you're not to speak. I mean, it sounds maybe a little oppressive, but it's actually for your own good. It's like these restrictions create the opportunities for your future career. The restrictions kind of create the freedom for you to just do your job, be yourself, and do the best job you can.
Well, you're exactly right. And what you don't understand, because I have thought about this, is, well, this could be interpreted as, what is this? You're talking royalty here? And it's, what you don't understand about that is sometimes there is a game plan, say, that the producer has, and the producer is the person in charge. He or she is the boss of that. And if you interfere in that process, just like you said, you could be messing up a whole game plan that you don't get yet. So yeah, don't mess yourself up. And still opportunities, I mean, they're going to present themselves. I was on a session when I was first starting in New Orleans at Toussaint recording studio. I was still getting to know, there were several producers that worked in and out of there, in addition to Allen Toussaint. But I'm getting ready to mix a record with a producer, and he said, man, this song needs congas. And he turned to me, because he had heard, he said, you play drums, don't you? I said, yes, sir. Oh, you want to do that? I said, sure. I never played congas ever. But I have a recording of me playing congas for the first time in my life, because I played it on a record. I mean,
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, I was a pretty good drummer,
Right, you had training. It's
but I
just
just, I'd never really played congas before.
yeah.
But and this song started with bass drums and congas, and it got a lot of airplay. And then I started getting nervous that because I started getting some calls to play congas on some sessions. Because boy, the best way to, when people hear you on the radio, they go, "Who did that? Let's
Mm,
call them up
mm.
and see if we can get them to play." And
Who's that conga player?
well, I can play a certain style of congas, but boy, if you're wanting this really hot, Latin conga guy, whew,
Mhm.
I am not your man. And
Yeah.
I kept
Yeah, I
thinking,
know what
oh
you mean.
gosh, I hope someone doesn't call and ask for that. But thankfully, they didn't. But
That's
again,
exactly
the reason I bring that up is that was an opportunity that was presented simply because, for one, I was there.
Mhm. Yeah. And you didn't sabotage yourself before the opportunity came,
Absolutely.
Yeah. That's fantastic. Hey,
I don't know,
so
Ryan. You sound like you almost know something about all of this.
oh no, it's just that, we've talked before. So I want to bring up our next point. Don't let your ego get in the way because it's so related to everything we've been talking about. I don't want to harp on this, but it's just so important to be the right person for the job attitude wise, not only skill set wise, because we focus so much on learning the skills, learning engineering, right, learning the musical side. But as we've said over and over again, a lot of it is just working with people that you like to work with, right? Building friendships. And so I just want to speak to this really quick. What do you mean by ego, right? What do you mean when you say don't let your ego get in the way? And what's an example of that?
Well, ego. I actually looked this up recently. Like the definition of the word. I think Freud first started using this, and not that I'm a big fan of that gentleman, but we use it primarily when we think in terms of negative terms of
Mm,
too much ego. This guy's full of himself, or she's full of herself.
mm,
She's a diva, he's a whatever.
mm,
And I think you have to have, and you need to keep a difference between confidence, and arrogance.
mm,
Arrogance, I don't have a lot. I'm not sure I have anything good to say about what I consider arrogance to be,
right.
because it's just that it's arrogance. I think so many times when I've seen arrogance, it's like a front for a lot of insecurity.
Mm-hmm.
So I hopefully try to see through that. Now, confidence is another thing. You need to be confident in what you're doing, even if you're a little insecure. And almost every creative person I know, if you really talk down deep, and I don't care how successful they are, everybody's a little bit insecure.
Of course we all are.
At
Yeah.
time. I mean, I know guys. When I send a mix off to to a client, it's like, God, don't take forever to get back to me, because everything's going on in my head. Oh my,
Yeah.
they hate the mix. Oh my gosh, my career's over. I wonder if I'll ever work again. And then when they call and they go, "Hey man, I love the mix," it's like, whew, okay, all right.
It's good to know I'm not the only one who feels that way.
Oh, and I've heard some very, very successful mixers say the same thing,
Mm.
and it actually made me feel good to go, okay. I've said the same thing you just said. I'm glad I'm not the only one. That
Just part of being human, it's just that's
yeah,
the
and
human way.
and
Yeah.
we always work to make our best better.
Mm,
But
mm,
I remember one of the things you and I were talking about, a few weeks ago. Some of my credits are as an assistant engineer,
mhm,
and these were after I'd already had several national chart records that I'd mixed.
mhm,
And you said, well, why would you do that? And I said, well, in every instance, it was at a studio that I'd worked at, and I was either filling in for someone,
mhm,
or it was a situation where, let's say, a name producer was coming in, and they brought their own engineer from, that they were used to working with, and they needed an assistant. And sometimes I was at studios that had a lot of assistants, and then sometimes, they didn't. And so I'd get a call and they say, hey, listen, you want to assist on this session that's coming in, like Stevie Ray Vaughan. And I said, sure. I mean, I looked at it two ways, at least two ways. For one, it was a job. So I got to work because, I got paid for doing that.
Right.
But secondly, it's also an opportunity to learn from someone else. And you never know what you're going to learn. I mean, you really don't.
Yeah.
So, and I've worked with some great engineers, and again, I know how to be an assistant. So, I tried to be invisible a lot, and I really mean that. And I really thought, like, okay, I need to be invisible, especially if I saw something creative really working, say between an artist and a producer. I did not want to interfere and get in the way and be disruptive at all. But at the same time, I was very attuned to what's going on, so that if something was needed, I can't tell you times when an engineer turned to me to tell me to do something, and I said, got it, and I'm gone. I knew what he was asking me to do. So I went ahead and I got it done, and I got it done like that. And probably why they like doing that. But, I could go, well, how come they're not using me to engineer this?
Right.
And I mean, inside, sure, I wasn't thinking of it from the negative aspect. I just looked at it as, okay, but here's an opportunity to work with some people that I haven't worked with before. So you meet people, and I learned something every time that I did one of those things, because again, I work with some great people. When I mix the jazz stage at the New Orleans Jazz and Heritage Festival, and have for the last several years. Out of 40 something acts in 2 weeks that I mix, there's generally about maybe 3 or 4 who bring their own people to mix. And most of the time it's the big artist.
Right.
And I do my same job for them as I do for anything else. I have, depending on the situation, I have everything laid out on the console. I mean, these things move like that.
Yeah.
There's no time just to sit and chit chat. But I've learned something from every one of these guys, because most of the time, believe it or not, these guys are even more experienced in age too, than I am. And they've all been extremely nice, and helpful. And I'll have questions about, certain things. Why did you do that? Or, why, at the appropriate time.
Appropriate time, yeah.
And I've never had anybody, hold anything back from it. Well, I do it like this because of, this, this, and this. And I'll tell you another thing. When it's their time to come up, like I have everything laid out on the console when the guy comes, and all this is moving very quickly. And I show the engineer, and I said, okay, I have everything labeled, marked out. And I said, okay, this is here, these are your returns, this is this is that. I will not get in your way. But then I always had a chair right over to the right, off to the side. I said, but I'm going to be right there. If you need me, just yell.
Fantastic.
And more than one person would, when it was over, said, hey, listen, man, really, thank you. You made this a whole lot easier. And I thought, well, that's my job. And, but some of these people said, well, look, not everybody's as nice as you about doing these things. And I don't get that, except I've done enough touring, as a musician to know that you're going to run into some wonderful people in the sound department and some people who maybe aren't as wonderful. But so I go out of my way to try to make things better for people, because that's the way I'd like for people to treat me.
Yeah.
And that just works. I mean, thankfully people call me back. I try not to be a hindrance, but to help. And if everything's going along smoothly, let it go.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And generally I work with really, really great people, especially the Jazz Fest people, the sound people that I work with there. I mean, these guys, they know what they're doing.
Yeah.
When I have a specific request, I tell them, and they do it. But for the most part, they know what they're doing. I'll let them do the job.
Right.
Teamwork.
Teamwork.
And I say, I want to make sure I say that. I'm not sure there's much more important than having a good team. I don't care what it is that you do, but if you're an artist trying to promote yourself, hopefully you have more than just yourself trying to do it, because I don't care how good we all are at whatever we do. None of us are all things. And
absolutely.
And the smartest thing that you can do, as a producer or as an artist, you figure out the things that you do really well, and that's what you continue to do. But you also figure out the areas that, okay, I don't really have this covered, or I don't really do this so well. Then you better find somebody, that can do it. And I'm finishing up a single on a group right now, and I'm also a keyboard player of sorts. And of these two songs, I played this B3 part, and to me it absolutely works. And then this other song, I put a part down, and I thought, you know what? I'm firing me. I didn't cut it. It was
off of keys.
it's just, okay, Jones, you're fired. And I was smart enough to do that. And so I actually got a really great keyboard player to come in and who gave me exactly what I needed to have, for a particular song. But every situation that I've been in that I saw that was successful on whatever level, there was some kind of a team being involved in it. So, boy, if there's anything I'm saying today, it's try to put together a team. I mean, if it's only two people, it's whatever you have, but figure out what your weaknesses are and fix those somehow. Try to find somebody, and you need somebody to believe in you. We've all had situations where I say we all. I can't speak for everyone. I can speak for me. I had some people who were really supportive. For me and in my career, I had some people who were not supportive at all.
Yeah.
And if you're surrounded by people who say, "Man, what are you trying to do? You can't do that. What makes you think you can do that?" You need to find maybe some new folks to hang out with, because we all need to be, supported in one way or another. So find your team and everybody sort of support each other. I'm involved in a couple of projects right now, and they're working because of the team that's put together. Because we have some great people involved, and we didn't even talk about technology in this. I look at our time. I see we're maybe running short, but I was on a call the other day. We were doing a mix, and I got one guy at his place here in Texas, and I'm here in this studio and with mixers in Toronto, Canada, and we're listening to the mix, high definition, all at the same time, making mix decisions.
Wow.
And I would like to think that the combination of the three of us, and we all three have tons of experience, doing this. And when we put that, of course, that was all kind of in one area, but you have to have promoters, you have to have booking agents, and as I think back, to my career, one decision has effect on the next thing in your life. That for another decision that gets there, and I think about, wow, I got to do all of this because, I got my job with Allen Toussaint off of a project that I did on an unsigned group in Memphis that basically was a project. I produced the whole thing and engineered it, and I didn't get paid anything for it.
Wow.
So, when people come to me, and sometimes the interns say, "Well, you got to pay me such and such," I just think, okay, well, thanks. I don't really have a budget for that. Have a nice day. And I think about some of the biggest breaks I've ever had in the business came from things that I didn't necessarily get paid as far as money, for the session, but they led to something that
Mhm.
opened, many, many doors. And then when you get that door open, you get an opportunity to work on something. And if that goes well, especially if you start if it's getting a lot of sales or you're getting a lot of airplay, then, people generally want to be associated with people that they think are having success.
Right. Yeah.
And that's how it builds up. The momentum, just gets going.
That's awesome. So good. All 5 points. Just got this all 5 points also apply to rehearsal room, whether it's a session or your original music. It's all great advice. So I know that everyone watching appreciates it. We're going to do Q&A now. I want to really make sure that we get your questions in. There's already a ton that have been posted, but thank you for being here with us live. We want to reward you for just joining us while we're actually in front of the camera. Of course, if you're watching the recording, feel free to drop a comment below the video, and we'll try to get to it. But right now, if you're still watching or you just joined on, we are live. Drop your questions in the comment box right now. We're going to start answering those right now because Danny's a wealth of information. I'm scrolling back up because there's a couple of really good ones at the beginning. Andrew says, hey, Ryan and Danny, do you think it's important to have a producer with experience in the genre that you're producing, or do you think a good producer can help anyone? And I'm pretty sure, correct me if I'm wrong, but Andrew, you are a producer. So I think he's asking from the producer standpoint.
Yes to both,
Mm-hmm.
actually. I mean, there are advantages, but it also depends, on which situation you're presented with. I've produced things. If I'm asked to produce, I need, for one, to know why they want me to produce it and what makes them think that, I would be a good fit with it. I think sometimes, even if you're producing something that maybe, obviously the advantage to being very familiar with your genre, that definitely has some, again, advantages about, certain styles. But then sometimes if a person comes from a little different background, it can bring a little different perspective, into the project. It's a very personal thing, and I say personal because all producers, all artists, we're all somewhat unique, in our own way. I think if I know with one project I did recently, I wasn't unfamiliar with it, but at the same time, I did my homework. I started researching, and I type in, Google. Gosh, when there's so much information out there, and all of a sudden, I'm listening to 20 different groups that are in this genre that I didn't even know there were that many groups in. But the more I listen, it's like, wow, okay, this is cool. And it's like, yeah, I can do that. And what I mean by saying I can do it is like, I get that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm relating to what they're doing musically. And, I think, and there's many different kinds of producers, but as far as I'm concerned, what I try to do is figure out what the vision of the artist is, and can I help them realize that, in what they're doing. And sometimes it's obvious to them, some of the things I'm doing, and sometimes it's not. Sometimes, and I think it's our job to make sure that we get the best, which means we have to challenge them. Sometimes I've been called a slave driver before, and not a lot, but I have before. And my response was, well, all right, how did you sound on this record? Oh, it's the best I ever sounded. Okay, call me slave driver.
Yeah.
I hope I answered that question. I know it's a somewhat vague answer, but it
right. I think it's definitely a nuanced question. And for me, at least, the way that I'm understanding it is that there's a difference between producing and playing, right? Like, Andrew, you don't have to play the instruments, and a lot of the authenticity comes from the players. It's just like what Danny said earlier, when he got the pro keyboardist because that's what he needed for that song. But for these other songs, he was able to do the part, in a way that the song needed, right? So as long as you understand the vision and you understand the genre and the style, right? You understand it on a musical level, which can be learned. I went to music school, I studied different genres, jazz, classical, that the styles can be learned. There's a difference between producing and playing, though. So to find that authenticity, you might have to actually build a team, just like what we just talked about, of those instrumentalists that can really just do the part justice. And you are wearing the hat of producer, assembling the team, making sure the project and the vision is what the artist needs. But you might not be able to play that genre, but you can produce the genre. I think that's the nuance that
Yeah,
it's the way that I see it.
Sometimes with some artists, and I'm a little different producer with different artists because different artists need, different, kinds of direction. Sometimes it's a matter of sorting through all of their ideas and keep them on, because I've worked with some that there's just so many ideas coming out all the time. It's like, okay, but wait, we need to develop this. Let's organize these thoughts and put this together so that we actually are telling a good story, as opposed to just a whole bunch of random ideas, that come from here and there. And again, it depends on the kind of producer and the kind of music that you're producing. I mean, some producers, they do all the music themselves, or they're writing everything, and they just find an artist to basically come on and do a vocal or a rap or whatever it is that they're doing. But that's not typically what I do. So I try to find them. First of all, like I said, I want to figure out where they're wanting to go, and then help them get there. And sometimes it's like, okay, no, a lot of times I've had people go, oh yeah, that's fine. And I said, how about just one more time for the magic? Maybe it wasn't quite as good as, as I thought, because the main thing is, do we make people have an emotional reaction, to what we do? If we don't do that, then to me, as a producer, or as a musician, as an artist, we missed the boat.
Wow,
we have failed in that. I would rather someone go, oh, I love that song, or oh, I hate that song, than go, because it's like, then evidently, I didn't do something right. Because that's what we're supposed to be. Music is about, emotional responses, in people. So it's just very important that we keep that in mind. And sometimes someone told me the other day, well, you think you want to do everything perfect, and it's like, no, whatever perfect means, I'm not really sure what that means anymore. I guess perfect means, for me, does it make an emotional? Did I go, wow, that really felt good, or did it tell a story? I mean, everything that you're doing, to me, it's about, we're communicating through music, and we're, all the little technical things, I mean, they're important, but we use those to tell a story. I mean, we read a book, but when it tells a good story, well, a dictionary has all the words in it, but it doesn't tell much story. So not too many of us sit up late at night engrossed in our dictionary, looking up words. So,
that's funny.
Anyway.
Yeah. James actually brought up a really great question as well. This is going to speak to your, New Orleans Jazz Fest experience, Houston rodeo gigs that you've done to huge audiences. And his question is, are there specialized sound engineers for each style of music? Or can an engineer equally work well across genres, like pop and rock versus jazz and classical? Can there be a huge difference in sound on the engineering side? I think it's an interesting question.
Well, That's a good question.
Hmm.
I think that most of the time people, um, if they start to work in a certain genre and there's and they're successful in it, if there's still a lot of work, they tend to stay in that. I think you can do all of it,
Hmm.
uh, but there are differences.
Hmm.
So you definitely, again, have to do your homework. I when I was starting out, engineering, there weren't all of the engineering schools, that exist today, and but I had worked a lot, in studios, so I got to call upon friends who were engineers, and I've been in situations where, I mean, I studied jazz in college, and I played in jazz bands, so I'm not like totally ignorant of the jazz world. And I've
Hmm.
ended up doing a lot of jazz records, and I do the Jazz Fest, but that wasn't always. Maybe I shouldn't say that. I was trying to say it wasn't always my first choice, but I did it, and I recorded, a lot of big bands, which, by the way, is not an easy task to do.
Hmm.
Um, and it, they turned out well, so I would get called to do that again, and I actually really do, enjoy that. But it's like Jazz Fest in New Orleans. Even though it's that, I mean, I go everything from a very quiet trio
Hmm.
to a group with 20 or 30 people on the stage. There's 20 minutes between acts. There's no huge sound check that goes on. I mean, well, you fly by the seat of your pants, on those things, and that's a pretty critical stage. And if they don't like the sound, there were people who will let you know. And I was told that quite emphatically by at least three different people the first year that I was there. This is like no pressure, uh, but I mean, I survived.
Hmm.
Uh, but I haven't. I was actually talking with one of the sound guys that came in. I'm trying to remember who he was with, maybe Herbie Hancock, and he was talking about some of these classical things that he did and how he was setting up, these recordings. And classical is a little bit different, uh, but it's just different than say if you're doing a rock band or a typical R&B session. Uh, I mean, I've done tons of R&B, and guitar sounds are one thing on that, but I also helped record Stevie Ray Vaughan and Joe Walsh, and that's
Hmm.
not a Stevie Ray guitar sound is not exactly what I would do on an R&B record.
Right.
I just finished a record on Clay Melton, and we had 2 amp setups going at the same time, with all the stuff, and and it sounded great, and I know how to do that, but I also know how to put one microphone on a guitar,
Hmm.
guitar amp,
Hmm.
and do that. Miking a country music acoustic guitar. There are guys that are just absolute masters at that, and get great sounds. But the most important thing of all of this is not the engineer; it's the guy or the girl playing the instrument.
Yes.
You
Hmm.
know, and I can't tell you this conversation I've had many times with people that have recorded, major artists, and we all said, we just tried our best not to mess it up.
Hmm.
You go out there and you hear this person playing, and you go, "Oh my gosh, this sounds wonderful. I got to make sure I really capture this, in a great way." So, getting back to that question that was asked, I think you can learn it all, but you better study it all.
Hmm.
And it's somewhat difficult unless you're in a very unique situation to get a lot of experience doing all of that. So
Yeah.
I'm not
Absolutely.
really sure what the, I mean, I understood the question, but I'm not really sure where the yeah, where James was going,
Yeah,
uh,
James, if I
other
can,
than just curious.
yeah, I think that, at least from my experience, that there's a lot of principles that do carry over, but it's just like what we mentioned earlier about producing is understanding the style, understanding the artistic direction, and also, there are some rules that maybe are introduced in a particular style that don't exist in another style, right? For example, if you're engineering rock and roll, you're going to use a lot of compression on the drums and the vocals and everything. And there's certain rules there. Whereas in classical, you're not going to use very much compression at all. And so it's really understanding the language of the style from an engineering standpoint, right? Because there's the musical standpoint, understanding the language of the style musically. But then on the technical side, on the engineering side, there's also a language and kind of a new set of rules for that style. And the mixing principles are going to remain the same, right? The frequencies are not going to change, all right? The knobs are not going to change, but the rules within the style are. And it's kind of just understanding, that new language. Maybe you can think of it as a new dialect that you have to understand. And so, and here's a follow-up comment. So I guess I should he's asking, should an artist actively seek a specialized sound engineer for recording?
Yep.
And go ahead, Danny.
Well, I was going to say, if you have access to someone that you've heard their work and you like their work, absolutely. Sometimes not everyone is always available. Sometimes, actually, a lot of times, budgets can dictate if someone is available. If you can afford to pay someone to do that. But I would say yes, but go with the best that you can get, and I mean that literally. I mean, if you can get someone who's really experienced in a particular area that you want, that's going to be your safest bet that you're gonna get what you're looking for there. But if you can't get that, then you go for whatever the next is. One thing that we can't do, if we wait for everything to be a perfect situation, you're going to be waiting a very, very long time sometimes. Well, I could do this session if I only had that microphone. And it's like, well, okay, but what if you don't have that microphone? So you're just going to sit at home and dream about it all the time? And I mean, you can, and a lot of people do, but
that's an option.
That's not what you do. Speaking of that, when I did a session, it was on the same group that I got this deal with Allen Toussaint. We took the tracks that I cut on my 1-inch 8-track machine and bounced those over to 24-track. And this was the end of the disco era, so they were putting real strings on one of the songs, and I had recorded horns in Memphis. And the string arranger, who was a very successful arranger and producer himself, Wardell Kazare, after the session, he came up to me after the string session. By the way, it was pretty cool getting to cut real strings on that. That was pretty exciting. But he says, "Hey, Danny," he said, "I want to ask you a question. What did you use on those horns?" And I was just a little bit apprehensive, and I said, "I don't know. Let me think. Why do you ask?" He said, "Man, that's one of the nicest horn sounds that I've heard. They were almost all SM57s, and I had a TM TAC Tascam Model 5, two Model 5 consoles, rigged together, and I was doing things like going out of one module into another module, and I mean, not exactly high tech and not exactly expensive microphones, but I had really good players, and I had a great friend of mine, Craig Baker, who did this great horn arrangement, and so they sounded good. So, but most of my mics, and it was a fairly large section, but most of the mics were, like I said, sure SM57s that anybody can afford, and probably everybody watching this YouTube thing here owns at least one.
Right.
So don't worry about equipment. I mean, you want to get the best that you can, but just don't let that stop you.
That's really great advice. Yeah, something that was told to me one time is that not only is the player going to affect the sound the most, but even where you place the mic is going to make more of a difference than the different mics, right? If you place it right in front of the bell of the horn, man, that's going to be bright, and you have an EQ there with your mic placement. more than the differences between, you know, an SM57 or a condenser mic or whatever. You know, those different placements are going to be huge audible changes in comparison to the difference of the microphone technology, which, you know, when it was said to me like that, it's like, okay, yeah. So even, you know, a multi-$1,000 condenser microphone can sound terrible if I don't use it right.
Right. Well, you know, there's another aspect to this too, and I read this years ago. I don't remember who wrote it, but they said, you know, you can take the greatest engineer in the world with the greatest microphone, with the greatest microphone preamp, and you go out and have great miking technique on a garbage can lid, and you know what you're going to get? A very well mic'd garbage can lid. So, you know, it still goes back, you know, to the source. I mean, engineering, you know, it's a big deal. There are lots of things that we can do, you know, to make things better, but it's still all about, you know, the source of what you have. And even at that, and this is a whole nother line of thinking here, but every record that I've had that's been successful, there were great songs.
There you go. Yeah.
Period.
Let's not forget about that part. Yeah.
And, you know, you can have a great singer and, you know, great musicians and a great engineer and a great studio and record a mediocre song. And you're going to have a very well played mediocre song, which is going to mean you're probably going to have a mediocre record.
So true.
So all this other stuff is all important, but, you know, it still goes back to the foundation of what you're doing. The foundation is the song. They love that in Nashville, huh?
Yeah, that's all we talk about here.
I know, and you know, I mean, I lived in Tennessee for many years, but you know what? It's also true. So it's there's probably nothing more important. I mean, everything's important, every ingredient, but you know, the song.
Yeah. We are running out of time. I do want to get to one more question. It's been so awesome having you here, Danny. So I just want to say thank you before we get to the end.
My pleasure.
A lot of great questions, and I'm so sorry if I had to skip one because we are. I usually like to keep these to an hour, and we're definitely over. So I just want to respect everyone's time here. But just grabbing a question I feel is relevant. Does simply working on projects help you develop a critical ear that a good producer needs? Or do you need to practice listening to production elements separately? It's a very interesting question, and I wanted to get your take on this.
I'm not sure what listening to production elements separately means.
So I think what he means is like taking, you know, a legendary recording, grabbing the stems and soloing out the bass line, being like, oh, okay, that's how he made that bass line sound, or soloing out the background horns and be like, oh, that's kind of where he placed them in the mix EQ wise or something like that.
Well, yeah.
Or is it the actual turning of the knobs that is that real-time feedback of actually working on a project more important?
Well, I think it's all the above. I mean, I still, you know, I'm making records now, but I still listen. You know, I listen a lot to other people's work, and that, you know, I'll listen and I'll watch. I mean, gosh, there's so much great information these days, you know, on the internet. I'll watch videos from, you know, other producers and engineers. And I remember one, sometime during this, you know, pandemic, and I watched so much stuff when most of us had a lot of extra time. And I watched one, and it was like a 40-minute video, and the people were really good. And I'm going, yeah, okay. To myself, you know, it's like, all right, I got this. I know this. And I thought, well, okay, I'm not sure I really learned anything on this. And all of a sudden, one statement was made, and I went, I hadn't thought about it like that before. That one statement was worth that whole 40 minutes of sitting through it. And I'm not saying it was boring. It's just, you know, I watch and I listen to learn. And that one was like, okay, well, yeah, I agree with that. This was good. This was good. But it was that one statement. And that was just one example. But then sometimes I'll watch things and it just, it gives me thoughts and ideas. Well, how do they do that? I really love the way their records sound. I wonder how they did that. And then you take that and you put it to practice, with what you do. And what you're going to find is sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah.
Because, every situation's, a little bit different. But I would try everything. I don't think there's anything. I think you have to study, but you have to put it in practice. I guess that's the end answer to that question.
I think that's a fantastic answer. Yeah. Studying, learning, always being a student, and then doing. Yeah. I think, that goes hand in hand, right? For anything. Yeah. That's wonderful. Hey, I want to be respectful of your time, Danny. Are you okay for 5 more minutes on here? I just want to make sure.
Absolutely.
Okay, great. I just want to say to everyone, last call, get your questions in. Yeah, go ahead, Danny.
You have, I don't know if it's on here, but I do have a website,
yes,
a web address, and you can send me notes. Obviously, comments on this, but as far as please put that website on there and tell you more.
Yes, everyone click Danny's website. I just dropped it in the chat there. Go ahead and open that in a tab to check it out after this call. And I know we both will really appreciate it.
If you have questions or I do still work. And I enjoy doing it. And the great thing about all of this technology is that we don't even have to be even in the same city or state or country these days to be able to work on projects. So I just did something a couple of weeks ago for a friend in New Mexico. Sent me tracks, said, hey, I want you to put drums on this, because they had sequence drums. So I put drums on it. I took her sounds, because we do a lot of reamping here, and even keyboard sounds, because I thought they were I just thought they could be improved upon. So, I took these and I ran them through my little things and recorded them off the new tracks and sent back, and she was thrilled. So
that's awesome. Reamping is something that I feel like we don't talk about a lot, but it's to get like the digital sterileness of plugins.
Well, we could do a whole nother thing on that, because we have about a dozen different guitar amplifiers here, and boy, they are wonderful. We got a lot of cool, little toys to run them through.
Yeah,
and we've done a lot of that, but that could be like a whole nother.
For sure. Yeah.
A whole nother time.
All right, guys, get your questions in. This will be last call. I want to jump through a few of them really quickly, kind of shotgun style, just so we can get the answers in. Here's a really great one. Mark is asking, should I hire a bass player for my song, even if that's the only part that I outsource?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. I would have to
do that all the time.
I have to agree.
I have a bass player that I work with who is just wonderful, and he comes in with great sounding basses, that we get to choose from. The guy's smart all on his own, but he also takes direction extremely well. And so I always end up with killer sounding bass, which is kind of important in a record.
Yeah, arguably one of the most important instruments. I can't overemphasize the importance of hiring a great bass player. And I'm not even a bass player, but as a drummer, I think we know, as the bass player's best friend.
I've said before that if I have a job with a band, if the band's not very good, if the bass player's really good, I'm happy.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
I forgot you're a drummer.
Oh yeah. Got my degree in jazz and classical.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, so fun. Love it. Prince is asking, oh wait, wrong one. Ask him about the zone, how to enter the mental zone, and why there's so much weak music out there. Why do you think there's so much terrible music out there? And how do you get in the zone to improve it? Short answer. I know this we can talk for hours about this,
Yeah.
but
There are people who have answers out there. Rick Beato has a YouTube channel.
fantastic channel.
He
Yeah.
addressed that recently.
Mm,
I do check him out from time to time, but I think he does a great job. And I'll refer that the weak music out there, to his answer on it, because he gave it in quite detail. How to enter the mental zone. Boy, that's actually a great question. You just have to focus on what it is that you're doing and try to put everything else, aside. And I think the biggie is to figure out, okay, what are you doing? Why are
mhm.
you here? What's the goal? What's the purpose of being
Mm,
here? And
yeah,
if something is not working, then you have to figure out, okay, what's not working?
yeah.
And then focus on that. It's a lot of, to me, in producing, is solving problems.
Mhm.
Problem may be, okay, the song's boring. Okay, why is it boring? Or maybe,
Mm,
maybe the production's boring. Okay, why is it boring? What's not
yeah.
working? And then you
Mhm.
start, attacking it and fixing things till you go, okay, now it's not boring.
I think that's so true. Asking the critical questions, getting other opinions in there, and really making decisions that serve the song, Prince. I think it really comes down to it.
Yeah.
Is a lot of times maybe songs are being made because maybe they're doing it for other reasons than actually serving the creative purpose and serving what the song actually needs. I
Well,
know that's
a lot
definitely.
of musicians, and I use the term, "Hey, mom, look, it's me." I get to play on this record, so let me show you how many notes I can play, how many runs I can sing,
Yeah.
and I mean, there's a place for that, but it's not most of the time. And what you said, serving the song. I mean, if it's not serving the song, then it doesn't need to be there. Period.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, those are tough questions to ask, but those are the answers that the song definitely needs. Okay, one more, and then we will have to end. I wish we can go on forever. I truly do, but I'll just have to cut it off at some point. These questions are so great. I'm going to pull up James one more time. He's asking for home producers. Is it a big handicap to not have the money to go to engineering school, or can that be overcome by working and trying to learn on your own? I think I know the answer to this one, but I'll let you take it, Danny.
Well, I never went to an engineering school. Uh, there
Make
were
that
only a couple
tuneless.
of them that I knew of, and they were like real far away and
Mhm.
very expensive, and,
Mm,
and I couldn't afford it. So I just started studying. I read everything I could get my hands on,
mhm,
and I most of the things that I learned to do were trial and error. I would read. That's why I made a comment earlier about, sometimes things that you read about are going to work for you, and then sometimes they're not. And but
mhm,
don't. And again, I was saying earlier, don't let anything hold you back. You
mhm,
can always find an excuse to say, "Well, I can't do this. I
mhm.
didn't have this. I didn't have that. I don't have money. I have too much money, so I have to do something else. I'm too tall. I'm too short. You
Yeah.
know, I'm too white. I'm too black. I'm too
Mhm.
whatever."
Yeah.
Bull. I mean, just get going and do the best that you can do. You're gonna
Mhm,
make mistakes. You're
mhm,
gonna find that, wow, okay, this wasn't as good as I hoped. Okay, well then make the next one better. I
mhm.
think it's extremely important to finish something. Whatever you start on, finish. Don't just work on one song forever and ever and ever. Although I can
Mm.
think of one of my clients right now that's going, "Danny, listen to your words as you finish my project." Uh, but we'll have no wine before it's time, however that goes. But it is important, to finish. So, I mean, is it a handicap to a degree? But it can only be a real handicap if you let it be that. Because, if you have access to the internet, which obviously you do, uh, oh my gosh, there is so much information out there. It's almost overwhelming. There's so much information.
Yeah.
So don't think that should hold you back at all. I mean, recording schools are great. I mean, I was adjunct faculty at the University of Memphis in the recording division for years when I was there.
Mm-hmm.
And those guys got a whole lot more information than I had when I first started out. So, you know, recording schools are wonderful, but if you don't have access to it, then that's okay. Because most, not all, but most of the successful engineers that I know never went to recording schools. Because a lot like me, they didn't have access to it. And we were fortunate enough to be able to get into the business. And we just learned about, you know, on-the-job training. And that's really the best. Even when you get out of a recording school, you've learned a lot. But now when you get into the professional realm, now you get to actually learn what all that stuff really means.
Yeah, that's great. That's wonderful advice. Daryl says, thanks, guys, for the live. Lots of great info. You're very welcome. So glad that you were able to join us. Prince says, thank you, Danny. I like your shows because you have spirit and sincerity. Well, we appreciate that, Prince.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, can't thank you guys enough. So much thanks. Actually, multiple thanks from Vasu. Let me know if I said that wrong. Johanna says, thank you for this live. You're very welcome. You're very welcome. You did great. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for joining us. So we have to bring this to an end. I really wish we could take your questions forever, but everyone, just please drop in the chat just your appreciation for Danny being here and spending 90 minutes with us. It's so generous of him. And so we just want to make sure we shower him with thanks for his time today and for his helpfulness. So definitely drop that in. And thank you for joining us, and thank you for your questions. It's much more fun when we do this together and you're able to join us live. So thank you for spending time with us today. And so with that, thank you for watching. Thank you again, Danny. We'll definitely have to have you back at some point. It's just been a pleasure.
I look forward to it. Thank you for letting me come on and talk.
Oh, absolutely. And William says, Danny, a long time no see. So it's great to have some familiar faces with us as well. So with that, thank you so much for tuning in. There will be more on this channel, so make sure that you subscribe. Definitely hit the thumbs up on this video. That helps the algorithm that we're constantly battling here as a YouTube channel. And so that really helps us as creators. And definitely stick around. The Indie Music Academy has so much to offer. We're doing a series where we're bringing experts on, so you can watch our past live streams on the channel, and also subscribe and hit the notification bell to get notified of future live streams with incredible music industry experts just like Danny. So thank you for watching. And with that, I'll see you on a future video. Have a great day and best of luck with your music.
Take care.